My name is Myra Mercer, and I spent 32 years as the invisible daughter in a family that only saw value in sons. When I was 18, my parents wrote a check for $180,000 to send my brother to medical school. When I asked for help with college tuition, my father looked me in the eye and said, "Girls don't need degrees. Find yourself a good husband." So I worked 3 jobs. I survived on 5 hours of sleep for 4 years. I graduated summa cum laude and put myself through Johns Hopkins Medical School without a single dollar from them. 12 years later, I became a cardiothoracic surgeon, one of the few women in my field. But at my brother's engagement party last month, my father stood in front of 150 guests and introduced Tyler as our only successful child. He had no idea that his future daughter-in-law was the patient I saved 3 years ago on my operating table. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story speaks to you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, one of those manicured suburbs outside D.C. where every lawn looked like it belonged in a magazine and every family had secrets hidden behind their perfect hedges. Our house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, 2-car garage, colonial shutters, a flagstone path lined with boxwoods that my mother trimmed every Sunday after church. My father, Harold Mercer, spent 30 years climbing the corporate ladder until he became CFO of a mid-sized insurance company. He wore the same style of pale blue Oxford shirt every day, pressed and starched, paired with a Rolex date, just he bought himself the day he got promoted. That watch was his trophy. His proof that hard work paid off, for the right kind of person. In our house there were rules. Not the kind anyone wrote down, the kind you learned by watching. Tyler got dropped off at school in my father's Lexus. I took the bus. Tyler got a math tutor when his grades slipped. When I asked for one, my father said, "You don't need that. Girls just need to study enough to get by." Tyler's baseball games were family events. My academic awards? My mother came once. My father never did. My mother, Linda, was a homemaker, soft-spoken, always smoothing things over. Whenever I questioned the rules, she'd pat my hand and say, "Your father does this because he loves you. He's just trying to protect you." Protect me from what? Success? I was the top student in my class every single year. Honor roll, National Merit Scholar. I had universities sending me letters before I even applied. But none of that mattered. Not to him. Because in my father's world, daughters weren't investments. We were liabilities waiting to become someone else's responsibility. And I was about to learn exactly how much that belief would cost me. The summer before my freshman year of college, my mother made meatloaf for dinner. She only made meatloaf when something important was happening. Birthdays, promotions, announcements. I was 18. I had just received my acceptance letter from the University of Maryland. A partial scholarship that covered most of my tuition, but I still needed about $15,000 a year to make it work. I remember smoothing the letter on the dining table, my heart pounding with hope I didn't want to admit I had. "I got in," I said. "With a scholarship. I just need help with the rest." My father picked up the letter. He didn't read it. He just glanced at the header and set it down next to his plate. "That money is for Tyler," he said, swirling the Macallan 18 in his glass like he was making a business decision, which, to him, he was. "Your brother will need a career. He'll have a family to support someday. You?" He finally looked at me. "You just need to find a good husband." I looked at Tyler. He was 14 then, hunched over his phone, pretending not to hear. He didn't say a word. Neither did my mother. The silence in that room was louder than any argument could have been. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into my pocket, and said the only thing I could manage. "Okay." That night, I didn't cry in my room. I didn't scream into my pillow. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and searched for part-time jobs near campus. I applied to 3 before midnight, because in that moment I made a decision. I would never ask my father for anything again, and I never did. College was a blur of early alarms and cold coffee. Job 1. Waitress at a diner 2 blocks from campus. I worked the breakfast shift, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., pouring coffee for truckers and retirees before running to my first class with grease still on my apron. Job 2. Library assistant. Afternoons and evenings, shelving books and manning the front desk. I learned to study between check-ins, cramming organic chemistry while stamping due dates. Job 3. Weekend math tutor for high school kids. The same service my father refused to pay for when I was their age. I averaged 5 hours of sleep a night for 4 years. I didn't go home for holidays. I told my mother I had extra shifts, which was true. What I didn't tell her was that I couldn't stomach sitting at that table, watching Tyler open presents bought with money that could have changed my life. I wore the same pair of sneakers for 2 years straight. When the sole started separating, I glued it back together and kept walking. Those shoes got me to class, to work, and eventually across the graduation stage. Summa cum laude. A 3.98 GPA, top of my class. I sent my parents an invitation to the ceremony. My mother texted back, "So proud of you, sweetheart. But Tyler has an important soccer game that day. We'll celebrate when you're home." I graduated alone. A professor I barely knew shook my hand and said, "Wherever you go from here, you've earned it." I cried in the parking lot for 10 minutes. Then I wiped my face, got in my car, and drove to the library to return my overdue books. That chapter was over. But the hardest part was just beginning. I applied to 12 medical schools. 3 accepted me. I chose Johns Hopkins, not because it was the most prestigious, though it was, but because they offered the best financial aid package: loans, grants, work study. I pieced it together like a patchwork quilt, and somehow it held. 4 years of medical school, 6 years of residency, 2 years of fellowship, 12 years of my life, building something no one in my family believed I could build. I specialized in cardiothoracic surgery, one of the most demanding fields in medicine. The hours were brutal. The pressure was relentless. I watched colleagues burn out, drop out, switch to easier specialties. I stayed, not because I had something to prove to my father. I stayed because every time I held a human heart in my hands, every time I watched a flat line turn into a steady rhythm, I knew this was exactly what I was meant to do. By 32, I was an attending surgeon at Johns Hopkins Hospital, one of the few women in my department, board certified, published, respected, and my family had no idea. My mother knew I worked at some hospital. That was the extent of it. She never asked for details, and I never offered them. I wore my Johns Hopkins medical ring every day, a gold band with the university crest. I bought it myself the day I graduated. It wasn't flashy. Most people wouldn't even notice it. But I noticed it every time I scrubbed in for surgery. Every time I needed to remember who I was and what I'd survived to get there. That ring was my proof, my quiet rebellion. Then, one evening, my mother called, and everything I'd spent 12 years avoiding came rushing back. It was 9 p.m. on a Tuesday when my phone lit up with my mother's name. She only called late when she didn't want my father to hear. "Myra, honey." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I have news. Tyler's getting engaged." I set down my glass of wine and leaned back against my kitchen counter. "That's great, Mom. Tell him congratulations. There's going to be a party at the Bethesda Country Club. Your father wanted something big, 150 guests, all his business contacts, golf friends, the works." I knew that club. Membership fees started at $50,000 a year, the kind of place where handshakes sealed deals and last names meant everything. "Sounds fancy," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "You can come, if you want." She hesitated. "But your father, he doesn't want anyone introducing you as a doctor or anything like that. He said you should just come as Tyler's sister. Keep it simple." "Keep it simple. Don't outshine the golden child." "Did he send me an invitation?" Silence. "Mom?" It was easier this way. He didn't want to make it formal. You know how he is. I knew exactly how he was. When is it? Saturday, the 14th, 7 p.m. I pulled up my calendar. No surgeries scheduled, no on-call duty. Part of me wanted to decline. The smart part. The part that had spent 12 years building a life that didn't need their approval. But another part, the part that still remembered being 18 and folding that acceptance letter into my pocket, needed to see this through. I'll be there, I said. My mother exhaled with relief. Just, don't wear anything too attention-grabbing, okay? Tyler is the star that night. Of course, Mom. Tyler's always the star. I took an Uber to the country club. I didn't want to deal with valet parking or anyone asking questions about my car, my job, my life. I just wanted to slip in, pay my respects, and slip out. The Bethesda Country Club looked exactly like I expected. White colonial architecture, crystal chandeliers visible through the tall windows, a manicured lawn stretching toward an 18-hole golf course. Luxury dripped from every corner. At the entrance, a security guard in a crisp blazer checked his clipboard. Name? Myra Mercer. He scanned the list, scanned it again, frowned. I'm not seeing a Myra Mercer. Of course not. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. 2 rings later, she appeared at the door, flustered and apologetic. She's with me, Mom told the guard, ushering me inside. She's family. Family. The word felt hollow. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a simple navy blue silk dress. Elegant, understated, nothing that would draw attention. My only indulgence was my Johns Hopkins ring, which I wore on my right hand like I always did. The ballroom buzzed with conversation. Crystal flutes clinked. A string quartet played something classical in the corner. Everywhere I looked, I saw designer labels and practiced smiles. My father stood near the entrance, greeting guests with a firm handshake and a politician's grin. When he saw me, his expression flickered, just for a moment, before settling into cool neutrality. He nodded once, then turned back to the couple he was talking to. No hug, no welcome, just a nod, like I was a distant acquaintance he was obligated to acknowledge. A man beside him asked, "Harold, who's that?" My father's answer was smooth, practiced, dismissive. Just a relative. I walked past him without a word, heading for the bar. That's when I noticed her, a woman in a white dress, staring at my ring. At 8 o'clock sharp, the music faded and a spotlight illuminated the small stage at the front of the ballroom. My father stepped up to the microphone, champagne flute in hand, Rolex glinting under the lights. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of a man who had spent decades commanding boardrooms. "Thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate a very special occasion." The room quieted. 150 faces turned toward him with polite attention. "Tonight, we honor my son Tyler, the pride of the Mercer family, our only successful child." The words hit me like a physical blow. Our only successful child. I stood frozen near the back of the room, champagne untouched in my hand, as my father continued. "Tyler is currently completing his medical training and will soon become a doctor. He represents everything this family stands for: hard work, dedication, and the courage to pursue excellence." Applause rippled through the crowd. Tyler stood near the stage, beaming, accepting congratulations from people who probably didn't know the first thing about him. "The Mercer family has always believed in investing in the future," my father went on. "And Tyler is proof that those investments pay off." I felt eyes on me. A few guests who knew I existed, friends of my mother perhaps, glanced my way with something that looked like pity. They knew. They could see what was happening. A woman beside me leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Isn't that his daughter, the older one?" "I thought they only had the one son," he whispered back. That's when I understood. My father hadn't just ignored me. He had erased me. I set my champagne glass on a nearby table, my hand steadier than I expected, and turned toward the exit. But someone was already walking toward me. She was beautiful in the way brides-to-be always are, glowing, radiant, wrapped in cream-colored silk that probably cost more than my first month's rent in medical school. But it wasn't her dress that stopped me. It was her eyes. They were locked on my hand, on my ring. "Excuse me," she said, closing the distance between us with quick, purposeful steps. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but do you work at Johns Hopkins?" My heart stuttered. "Yes," I said carefully. "I do." Are you a surgeon?" The ballroom noise seemed to fade. The clinking glasses, the murmured conversations, all of it dissolved into white noise as I looked at this woman, really looked at her, and felt the memory click into place. 3 years ago, 2 a.m. A 26-year-old woman, chest crushed in a car accident, bleeding out on my operating table, 7 hours of surgery, touch and go until the very end. I remembered her face, younger then, pale, hovering between life and death. "Rachel," I said, her name surfacing from somewhere deep in my memory. "Rachel Porter." Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. "It's you. Oh my God, it's really you." Before I could respond, Tyler appeared at her side, his smile stiff with confusion. "Babe, what's going on?" He looked at me, then back at Rachel. "Do you know my sister?" Rachel's head snapped toward him. "Your sister?" Her voice cracked. "Tyler, you never told me what your sister does for a living." Tyler's jaw tightened. I could see him calculating, trying to control the narrative. "She works at a hospital," he said quickly. "Some administrative thing." Rachel stared at him. Then she stared at me. "Administrative?" she repeated slowly. "Tyler, this woman saved my life." Tyler's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, panic, and then a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Babe, let's not make a scene." He reached for Rachel's arm. "There are some important people I want you to meet. Mr. Davidson from Dad's old firm is here, and—" "Tyler," Rachel pulled her arm back. "Did you hear what I just said?" "I heard you, and that's great, really. But we can catch up with Myra later." He shot me a look, the same look he used to give me when we were kids, and I accidentally got better grades. "Right, sis?" I said nothing. I just watched. "Why didn't you tell me your sister was a doctor?" Rachel pressed. She's not. She's—" Tyler stumbled over his words. "Look, it's complicated. Our family is complicated. Can we please just enjoy the party?" "Complicated how?" The guests nearest to us had started to notice. Heads were turning, whispers spreading like ripples in a pond. Tyler lowered his voice, his smile becoming strained. "Myra, can you just go? This is my night. You've already caused enough trouble just by showing up." I felt the old familiar sting, the one I'd spent years learning to ignore. "I'm not causing anything, Tyler. I'm standing here." "You know what I mean." His voice dropped to a hiss. "You always have to make everything about you. Even now. Even tonight." Rachel looked between us, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder. Something suspicious. "Tyler," she said quietly, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Why didn't I know your sister is a surgeon?" He didn't answer. And in that silence I saw the first crack in the perfect image my family had spent decades constructing. My father materialized beside us, like he had a sixth sense for disturbances in his carefully orchestrated events. "What's going on here?" His voice was low, controlled, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "Nothing, Dad." Tyler jumped in immediately. "Myra was just leaving." "I wasn't," I said calmly. My father's eyes flicked to Rachel, then to the small cluster of guests pretending not to eavesdrop. "Myra!" He said my name like it was a problem to be solved. "This is Tyler's engagement party. If you're not going to be supportive, perhaps it's best if you—" "If I what, Dad? Disappear?" Like I always do? Rachel stepped forward. Mr. Mercer, did you know that your daughter is a hospital employee? My father cut in smoothly. Yes, we're aware. But tonight isn't about her. Tonight is about Tyler and his future. His future. His career. His success. Always his. A man nearby, someone I recognized vaguely as one of my father's golf buddies, cleared his throat. Harold, I didn't realize you had a daughter. You've never mentioned her. My father's smile tightened. We're a private family, George. Myra chose a different path than the rest of us. She's independent. Independent. The word dripped with dismissal. Perhaps too independent, he added, lowering his voice just enough that only those closest could hear, but loud enough to make his point. Some children want to be part of the family. Others, he shrugged, others don't have anything to contribute. The air around me went cold. I had spent 12 years building a career, saving lives, earning every credential through sweat and sacrifice. And in 3 sentences, my father had reduced all of it to nothing. Rachel was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. And maybe she hadn't. Not the real him. I felt the heat crawling up my neck, the old familiar urge to shrink, to apologize, to disappear. For 18 years, I had lived under this man's roof and learned that survival meant silence. For 12 more, I had built a life where his opinion didn't matter. But standing there, in that glittering ballroom surrounded by strangers who thought my father was a great man, I realized something. I was done shrinking. I took a breath, then another. My heartbeat slowed to the steady rhythm I used before surgery. Calm, focused, precise. I'm not leaving, Dad. My father blinked. Excuse me? I came to celebrate my brother's engagement. I'm going to stay, have a glass of water, and congratulate the happy couple. I smoothed the front of my dress. That's what family does, isn't it? His face reddened. Myra, you don't have to introduce me to anyone. You don't even have to acknowledge I exist. I'm used to that. I met his eyes without flinching. But I'm not leaving because my presence makes you uncomfortable. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I turned and walked to the bar, my heels clicking against the marble floor with a confidence I had earned in operating rooms and overnight shifts and years of proving myself to people far more intimidating than Harold Mercer. I ordered sparkling water with lime. The bartender slid it across the counter with a small nod. I took a sip and watched the party continue around me. The forced laughter, the air kisses, the elaborate dance of wealthy people pretending everything was fine. I didn't need to make the scene. I didn't need to expose anyone. I just needed to stand my ground. And from across the room, I saw Rachel watching me with something that looked like respect. She was walking toward me again. I want to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever been dismissed by the people who were supposed to love you the most? Have you ever achieved something incredible, only to have your family pretend it didn't happen? If that's you, drop a comment below. Just type, I understand. Let me know I'm not alone in this. And if you want to know what Rachel said to me next, keep watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you're on my side. Before Rachel could reach me, my mother intercepted her path. Sweetheart, let me introduce you to some of our friends from the club, Mom said brightly, steering Rachel toward a group of older women dripping in pearls. Then she doubled back to me, her smile fixed but her eyes pleading. Myra, honey. She gripped my elbow, her fingers trembling slightly. Please, don't do this. Not tonight. Don't do what, Mom? I'm just standing here. You know what I mean. She glanced over her shoulder, checking if my father was watching. Your father is already upset. Tyler is nervous. This is supposed to be a happy night. And my presence ruins that? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Mom, do you even know what I do for a living? Her eyes dropped to the floor. You know I work at Johns Hopkins. You know I'm a surgeon. You've known for years. My voice was quiet but firm. Why have you never told him? Your father wouldn't, she trailed off. He wouldn't have believed me. He'd already made up his mind about you. So you just let him? I didn't have a choice. You had a choice every single day, Mom. You just didn't take it. Her eyes glistened. For a moment, I saw the mother I remembered from childhood, the one who used to sneak me extra dessert and tell me I could be anything I wanted. That woman had disappeared a long time ago. I know you've done well for yourself, she whispered. I'm proud of you. I just can't. Can't what? Say it out loud? She squeezed my hand once, then let go. Please just go home, Myra, before things get worse. They're already worse, Mom. They've been worse my entire life. I watched her walk away, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry, I just felt sad. I drifted to the corner of the ballroom, near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the golf course. Outside, the landscaping lights cast golden pools across the pristine grass. I could see the outline of luxury cars in the parking lot. Mercedes, BMWs, a few Porsches. The world my father desperately wanted to belong to. Inside, 150 people laughed and clinked glasses and celebrated a future that had nothing to do with me. I looked down at my ring, the Johns Hopkins crest catching the light. I thought about the day I earned it. The ceremony was small, held in a conference room with bad coffee and fluorescent lighting. My classmates had families filling the seats, parents dabbing tears, siblings snapping photos. I sat alone in the third row. When they called my name, I walked up, shook the dean's hand, and accepted my ring with no one to witness it. Afterward, a janitor setting up chairs for the next event said, "Congratulations, Doc." He was the only person who acknowledged my accomplishment that day. I pressed my thumb against the ring now, feeling its weight. What am I even doing here? I had spent 12 years building a life that didn't require their approval. A life filled with colleagues who respected me, patients who trusted me, work that mattered. Why was I standing in a corner at my brother's engagement party, hoping for something I knew I'd never get? Through the glass, I watched a couple stroll arm in arm toward the garden, happy, oblivious, normal. Maybe I should just leave. Let them have their perfect night. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Kevin Chen, a colleague back at Hopkins. "Hey Myra, random question. Your brother Tyler, did he finish his residency? Just saw him at a pharma conference. Thought he was still in training?" I stared at the screen, and everything changed. I read the message 3 times. Thought he was still in training. Tyler wasn't in training. According to my mother's updates, the few she shared, Tyler was finishing up his residency and about to become a doctor any day now. That was the story. The narrative my father broadcast to anyone who would listen. But Kevin had just seen Tyler at a pharmaceutical sales conference, not a medical conference, a sales conference. I opened a browser on my phone and searched. Tyler Mercer Pfizer. 3 results. A LinkedIn profile, a company directory listing, a conference speaker bio from 6 months ago. Tyler Mercer, medical sales representative, Pfizer Inc. No residency, no medical license, no doctor in front of his name. He had dropped out 2 years ago based on the dates. My father had spent $180,000 on Tyler's medical education, and Tyler hadn't even finished. He'd quietly pivoted to pharmaceutical sales and never told anyone. For 2 years, he had been lying to our entire family. I slipped my phone back into my clutch, my mind racing. This wasn't my weapon. I didn't come here to expose anyone. But as I watched my father work the room, shaking hands, boasting about his future doctor son, I realized something. The truth didn't need me to weaponize it. The truth had a way of surfacing on its own. I thought about every patient who had ever thanked me after surgery, every life I had helped save, every 18-hour shift, every sacrifice, every moment I had chosen this path despite having no one to support me. I didn't need to prove anything to my father, but I also didn't need to protect my brother's lies. I straightened my shoulders and looked across the room. Rachel was finally breaking free from the group of women. She was heading my way. This time, I didn't look away. I met Rachel halfway, near one of the tall cocktail tables draped in white linen. "I'm sorry about earlier," she said, slightly breathless. "Tyler's mother kept pulling me around to meet people." "It's fine. It's your party." "It's supposed to be," she bit her lip. "But nothing about tonight feels right." I studied her face, the furrow between her brows, the tension in her shoulders. This wasn't bridal glow. This was doubt. "Rachel, how much do you know about Tyler's career?" She blinked at the question. "He's finishing his residency, internal medicine. He's supposed to start his fellowship next year." "That's what he told you?" "That's what he's told everyone." Her voice wavered. "Why? Is there something I should know?" I hesitated. This wasn't my secret to tell, but it also wasn't my lie to protect. "I just received a message from a colleague. He saw Tyler at a pharmaceutical sales conference last week." "A sales conference?" Rachel shook her head. "No, Tyler doesn't do sales. He's a doctor. Well, almost a doctor." "Rachel." I kept my voice gentle but direct. "I looked it up. Tyler works for Pfizer. He's listed as a medical sales representative. He has been for at least 2 years." The color drained from her face. "That's not possible. He shows me his schedule. He talks about his patients. She stopped. Something clicked behind her eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. "The hours. He's always so vague about where he goes. I thought it was because he was busy at the hospital." "I'm not trying to hurt you," I said. "I just think you deserve to know the truth before you marry him." Rachel stared at me. Then she looked across the room at Tyler, who was laughing at something his father said. "He's been lying to me for 2 years?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Rachel stood frozen for a long moment, processing. Then she turned back to me with a different look in her eyes, sharper now, more focused. "Wait, can we go back to what I said earlier?" She took a breath. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident. A bad one. My sternum was crushed. I had internal bleeding. They told my parents I probably wouldn't survive the night. I nodded slowly. I remember. The surgeon who saved me, Dr. Myra Mercer, operated on me for 7 hours. She held my heart in her hands. Rachel's voice cracked. When I woke up in the ICU, she was there. She held my hand and said, "You fought hard. Now you get to live." I remembered that too. I remembered her parents sobbing in the waiting room. I remembered the moment her vitals stabilized, and I finally exhaled. "That surgeon was you," Rachel said. "Wasn't it?" "Yes." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Before I could react, she pulled me into a tight embrace. "I've thought about you every single day for 3 years," she whispered against my shoulder. "I went back to the hospital once to find you, but they said you transferred to a different department. I never got to thank you properly." "You just did." She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "This whole time you were Tyler's sister. He talked about you like you were nobody, like you didn't matter." "To him, I don't." "But you matter to me." Her voice hardened. "You saved my life. And his family treats you like you're invisible?" She looked toward the stage, where the microphone still stood from my father's earlier speech. "No," she said quietly. "That's not okay. That's not okay at all." "Rachel, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She squeezed my hands. "The truth needs to come out, all of it." "What are you going to do?" I asked. Rachel glanced toward the stage, then back at me. "I was supposed to give a speech later. Thank Tyler's family for welcoming me. Talk about how excited I am for our future together. And now? Now I'm going to tell the truth." She straightened her shoulders. "Not to hurt Tyler. Not to embarrass your father. Just because I don't want to build a marriage on lies. Rachel, this is your engagement party. Are you sure you want to do this here, in front of everyone? Where else?" She laughed bitterly. "Tyler's been lying to me for 2 years. Your father just stood up there and called Tyler his only successful child, when you are the one who actually became a doctor, a surgeon, someone who saves lives. She shook her head. I almost died, Myra. Do you know what that does to a person? It makes you realize how short life is, how precious. I promised myself after that accident that I would never waste time on things that weren't real. Her eyes met mine. Tyler isn't real. The future we planned isn't real. But you, what you did for me, that was real. I felt something shift in my chest. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Something quieter. Relief, maybe. That someone finally saw me. I'm not going to accuse anyone of anything, Rachel said. I'm just going to tell my story and let people draw their own conclusions. And Tyler? Tyler can explain himself, if he even can. She touched my arm. Will you stay? I don't want to do this without you here. I thought about leaving, thought about protecting myself from the fallout, but I had been protecting myself for 12 years. Maybe it was time to just stand in the truth. I'll stay, I said. Rachel nodded and walked toward the stage. The MC, a friend of my father's who had been managing the evening's program, tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. Our beautiful bride-to-be, Rachel Porter, would like to say a few words. Polite applause rippled through the room. Rachel climbed the 3 steps to the small stage, her cream silk dress catching the light. She looked every bit the perfect fiancée, poised, beautiful, gracious. But I could see her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the microphone. 150 guests turned their attention to her. My father stood near the front, beaming with proprietary pride. Tyler positioned himself at the base of the stage, ready to gaze adoringly at his bride. Thank you all for being here tonight, Rachel began, her voice clear and steady. I'm so grateful to celebrate with Tyler's family and friends. My father nodded approvingly. Before I talk about Tyler, Rachel continued, I want to share something personal, something that shaped who I am today. A murmur of interest passed through the crowd. This wasn't the standard thank you speech they were expecting. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident. A semi-truck ran a red light and hit my driver's side door at 50 miles an hour. Gasps. Sympathetic murmurs. I was rushed to Johns Hopkins with a crushed sternum and massive internal bleeding. The doctors told my parents I had a 20% chance of surviving the night. Rachel paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. But I did survive. Because of one person, one extraordinary surgeon who operated on me for 7 hours and refused to give up. I felt the eyes beginning to shift. People were looking around, wondering where this was going. Rachel looked directly at me. That surgeon is in this room tonight. The ballroom went silent. Her name, Rachel said, her voice unwavering, is Dr. Myra Mercer. She's a cardiothoracic surgeon at Johns Hopkins Hospital, one of the best in the country. She pointed toward me, and 150 heads swiveled in my direction. She's also Tyler's sister. The silence exploded into whispers. I stood frozen in my corner, heart pounding, as Rachel continued. I didn't know this until tonight. Tyler never mentioned that his sister was a doctor. In fact, his family introduced her to me as someone who works in hospital administration. Rachel's voice sharpened. But that's not true. Dr. Mercer isn't an administrator. She's a surgeon, a brilliant one, the woman who gave me a second chance at life. My father's face had gone pale. Tyler looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. What's even more confusing, Rachel went on, is that just a few minutes ago, Mr. Mercer stood on this very stage and introduced Tyler as the only successful child in the family. She let that sink in. I'd like someone to explain to me how that makes sense. How does a family ignore the daughter who became a surgeon while celebrating the son who... She stopped herself, took a breath. I'm sorry. I didn't come up here to attack anyone. I came up here because the truth matters to me. And the truth is that Dr. Myra Mercer saved my life. Without her, I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't have met Tyler. I wouldn't have any of this. Rachel looked at me again, tears glistening in her eyes. Myra, would you please come up here? I'd like everyone to meet the woman who made my future possible. Every eye in the room was on me. I had two choices: shrink or stand. I chose to stand. I walked through the parted crowd, my heels clicking against the marble with each step. The whispers followed me like a wave. That's the daughter? Harold never mentioned a daughter. A surgeon at Hopkins? Why would they hide that? Something's very wrong here. I climbed the steps and stood beside Rachel. She reached for my hand and squeezed it. From the crowd, a man's voice called out, Dr. Howard Brennan, a cardiologist who was apparently among my father's golf circle. Myra Mercer? He stepped forward, recognition dawning on his face. I attended your presentation at the American Heart Association conference last spring. Your research on minimally invasive mitral valve repair was exceptional. More murmurs, more turning heads. Thank you, I said simply. Rachel leaned into the microphone. For those who don't know, and apparently that includes Tyler's own family, Dr. Mercer is board certified in cardiothoracic surgery. She's published in peer-reviewed journals. She's saved countless lives, including mine. She turned to face my father, who stood motionless near the front, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Mr. Mercer, I mean no disrespect, but I have to ask, why did you tell this room that Tyler is your only successful child? Your daughter is standing right here. She's accomplished more than most people will in a lifetime. The room held its breath. My father's mouth opened, closed, opened again. This is hardly the time or place. It seems like exactly the right time and place to me, Rachel said calmly. You chose to celebrate Tyler's success publicly. Why can't we acknowledge Myra's? Someone in the back started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Not for my father, not for Tyler, but for me. And I hadn't asked for any of it. The truth had simply found its way into the light. Rachel handed me the microphone. For a moment, I just stood there, looking out at the sea of faces, some curious, some sympathetic, some uncomfortable. I could have destroyed my father right there. I could have laid out every slight, every rejection, every moment he made me feel worthless. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. Thank you, Rachel. I kept my voice calm, measured. And thank you, everyone, for your kind applause. I didn't come here tonight expecting any of this. I paused, collecting my thoughts. I came because Tyler is my brother, and I wanted to wish him well. That's it. I didn't come to cause drama or make anyone uncomfortable. My father's posture relaxed slightly. He thought I was backing down, but I also won't pretend to be something I'm not. I met his eyes. I'm not a hospital administrator. I'm not just a relative. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've spent 12 years training for this career, years I funded entirely on my own. The room was utterly silent. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you this because the truth matters. Rachel's right about that. I turned to look at her. 3 years ago, she came into my operating room more dead than alive. I spent 7 hours fighting to keep her heart beating. When she woke up, I promised her that her fight was worth it. Rachel wiped tears from her cheeks. I don't need anyone's validation, I continued, turning back to the crowd. I stopped needing that a long time ago, but I also won't stand quietly while the people who should have supported me pretend I don't exist. I set the microphone back on the stand. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. I stepped back, and that's when Tyler lost control. Tyler stormed onto the stage, his face flushed red, his carefully gelled hair starting to come undone. Are you serious right now? He grabbed the microphone, his voice cracking with barely contained rage. This is my engagement party, and you just had to make it about you, didn't you? Rachel stepped toward him. Tyler? No! He jabbed a finger in my direction. She's always been like this, always trying to prove she's better than me, always competing. Even now, even on the one night that's supposed to be mine, she can't just let me have it. The guests shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the charming Tyler they thought they knew. I didn't do anything, Tyler. My voice was steady. Rachel asked me a question and I answered honestly. Honestly? He laughed bitterly. You want to talk about honesty? Fine. Let's talk about how you abandoned this family, how you never come home, how you act like you're so much better than all of us. Tyler. My voice cut through his tirade like a scalpel. When were you going to tell everyone you dropped out of your residency 2 years ago? The room went absolutely still. Tyler's face drained of color. What? You're not becoming a doctor, Tyler. You're a pharmaceutical sales rep. You have been for 2 years. I paused. Dad's $180,000 and you couldn't even finish. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Rachel stepped forward and slowly, deliberately, pulled the engagement ring from her finger. I asked you one thing, Tyler. One thing when we started dating. I said, please never lie to me. She placed the ring in his trembling hand. You've been lying to me since the day we met. She walked off the stage without looking back. Tyler stood alone under the spotlight, holding a ring no one wanted anymore. Can I be honest with you for a second? That moment, watching Tyler stand there with that ring, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. 12 years of silence, and this was how it ended. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Tyler deserved this, or do you feel sorry for him? And if you're still here, if you want to know what happened with my father, keep watching. This is the part I waited 12 years for. My father finally moved. He climbed the stage steps slowly like a man walking toward his own sentencing. His Rolex caught the light as he reached for his son's shoulder. Tyler, we'll discuss this at home. His voice was low, controlled, but I could see the vein pulsing in his temple. Everyone, please, let's not let this small misunderstanding ruin the evening. Misunderstanding? Dr. Brennan stepped forward from the crowd. Harold, your daughter is one of the most respected cardiothoracic surgeons on the East Coast. I've read her research. I've watched her present at national conferences. And you've been telling everyone she's an administrator? More voices joined in. The carefully cultivated facade was crumbling. My father turned to me, his face a complicated mix of anger and something I'd never seen before. Fear. Myra, this isn't the place. You made it the place, Dad. When you stood up there and called Tyler your only successful child in front of everyone I grew up around. Tyler needed... He stumbled over his words. You don't understand the pressure he's been under. Pressure? I almost laughed. You paid for his entire education. You supported every decision he ever made. And when he failed, you covered for him. I stepped closer. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school. I slept 5 hours a night for 4 years. I earned everything I have with absolutely no help from you. That was your choice. No, that was your choice. You decided I didn't deserve support because I was born a girl. I kept my voice level. I'm not asking for an apology. I stopped waiting for that years ago. He stared at me, speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. But I won't let you erase me anymore. Not in front of these people. Not ever again. Rachel stood at the bottom of the stage steps, arms crossed, waiting. Tyler descended slowly, still clutching the engagement ring like it might save him. Rachel, please, let me explain. Explain what? Her voice was calm, but I recognized that calm. It was the same calm I used when a surgery was going wrong, the moment right before decisive action. I was going to tell you. When? On our wedding night? After we bought a house? She shook her head. You told me you were a doctor, Tyler. You showed me your schedule. You complained about difficult patients. All of it was lies? Not lies, just I was protecting you. Protecting me from what? The truth? Rachel laughed, but there was no humor in it. I told you about the worst moment of my life. I told you about my accident, my surgery, my recovery. I was completely honest with you about everything. Tyler said nothing. And now I find out that the surgeon who saved my life, the person I've wanted to thank for 3 years, is your sister. A sister you deliberately kept hidden from me. That's not. Your father just introduced you as his only successful child while your sister stood 15 feet away, a sister who actually became a doctor. And you were okay with that? Tyler's silence was damning. Rachel took a deep breath. I loved you, Tyler. I really did. But I can't marry someone I don't know. And clearly, I don't know you at all. She turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking with finality against the marble floor. Tyler called after her. Rachel, please! She didn't look back. The ring fell from Tyler's hand and bounced on the floor with a small, pathetic clink. No one moved to pick it up. In all the chaos, I hadn't noticed my mother approaching. She climbed onto the stage, something I'd never seen her do in my entire life. Linda Mercer didn't make scenes. She didn't draw attention. She smoothed things over and kept the peace. But not tonight. Myra. I turned to face her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her careful makeup starting to smudge. I'm so sorry. The words hung in the air between us. I knew what you accomplished, she continued, her voice trembling. I followed your career from a distance. I read about your research. I saw the hospital announcements when you were promoted. I felt something crack in my chest. Then why didn't you ever say anything? Because I was afraid. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Afraid of your father. Afraid of disrupting the family. Afraid of... She took a shaky breath. Afraid of admitting I failed you. My father stood frozen behind her, watching this unfold like a man witnessing his world collapse. You were 18 years old, and I let him tell you that you didn't matter. I should have stood up for you. I should have protected you. Her voice broke. But I didn't. And you had to protect yourself. She reached for my hands, and I let her take them. The woman you became, the surgeon, the success, all of it. You did that alone. Despite us. Not because of us. She squeezed my fingers. I'm so proud of you, Myra. I should have said it years ago. I felt tears threatening to fall, the first I'd allowed myself in a long time. Thank you, Mom, I managed. That means more than you know. She pulled me into a hug. A real one. The kind I hadn't felt since I was a child. Behind us, my father stood silent, watching, processing. For once, he had nothing to say. I held my mother for a long moment. Then I gently stepped back. The ballroom had grown quiet. Guests were starting to drift toward the exits, conversations hushed and uncomfortable. The party was over in every way that mattered. Tyler had disappeared, probably to lick his wounds somewhere private. My father still stood on the stage, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I didn't have anything left to say to either of them. I should go, I told my mother. She nodded, still holding my hand. Will you call me, soon? Yes, I'll call. As I descended the stage, Rachel intercepted me near the door. Myra, wait. Her eyes were dry now, her composure restored. I don't know how to thank you. For tonight, and for everything else. You don't need to thank me. I touched her arm briefly. You saved yourself tonight, Rachel. You chose truth over comfort. That takes courage. I learned it from you. She smiled weakly. 3 years ago, when I woke up in that hospital room, you told me something I never forgot. What was that? You said, the hardest part is over. Now all you have to do is live. She took a shaky breath. I think I finally understand what you meant. I hugged her, briefly, but genuinely. Take care of yourself, Rachel. You're going to be okay. She nodded and stepped aside. I walked out of the Bethesda Country Club into the cool night air. The valets scrambled around luxury cars, but I walked past them, pulling out my phone to request an Uber. The automatic doors closed behind me, muffling the murmurs and the music. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 12 years, my chest didn't feel tight. I had said my piece. I had stood my ground. Now I could go home. A lot can change in 7 days. Rachel called off the engagement. She sent me a text the next morning. Thank you for telling me the truth. Starting over is scary, but it's better than living a lie. We've stayed in touch. She's thinking about going back to therapy, processing everything. I think she'll be okay. Tyler finally confessed to my parents about dropping out. According to my mother, who has been calling me every other day now, my father didn't take it well. He cut off Tyler's financial support until, as he put it, Tyler has a real plan for his life. Ironic, considering he never gave me any support to cut off in the first place. My mother started attending family counseling. She asked my father to join her. He refused at first, but after a week of silence from everyone he used to impress, he agreed to at least one session. I'm not holding my breath for transformation. Some people are too set in their ways. But the fact that he's trying, even a little, is more than I ever expected. As for me, I went back to work. The Monday after the party, I had a double bypass scheduled at 7 a.m. I scrubbed in, made my incisions, and spent 4 hours doing what I do best. When the patient's heart started beating on its own again, I felt that familiar surge of purpose. This is why I do what I do. Not for recognition, not for validation. For moments like this, when someone gets a second chance at life because I refuse to give up. My phone buzzed in my locker after the surgery, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is your father. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "When you're ready to listen, I'll be here." You might think this story ends with me forgiving my father, with a tearful reconciliation and a happily ever after. That's not how real life works. The truth is, I'm still figuring out what my relationship with my family looks like. Maybe we'll find our way back to something healthy. Maybe we won't. Either way, I've made peace with it. Because here's what I learned over the past 12 years. You cannot control how other people see you. You cannot force someone to acknowledge your worth. You can only control who you are and what you do with your life. I spent too many years waiting for my father to be proud of me, hoping that one more achievement, one more award, one more success would finally make him see me. But some people aren't capable of seeing beyond their own expectations. That's not your failure. It's theirs. The real victory wasn't standing on that stage while Rachel told everyone who I was. The real victory was the moment I realized I didn't need anyone's approval to know my own value. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've saved lives. I've built a career that means something. No one gave that to me. I earned it. And if my father ever wants to be part of my life, he'll have to earn his way back too. That's not cruelty. That's boundaries. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting people off forever. It means saying, "I love you, but I will not let you hurt me anymore." It means protecting the life you've built, even from the people who were supposed to help you build it. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, the overlooked daughter, the underestimated child, the one who was never quite enough, please hear me. You are enough. You always were. Don't wait for them to see it. See it in yourself. After everything settled down, I had coffee with a friend, a psychologist who specializes in family dynamics. "Why do you think my father is like this?" I asked her. "Is he just a bad person?" She shook her head. "People are rarely that simple." She explained that my father likely grew up in an environment where his own worth was tied entirely to achievement, specifically, male achievement. His father probably measured success the same way, and his father before him. "It's a generational pattern," she said. "He internalized the message that sons carry the family legacy and daughters are secondary. Not because he hates women, but because that's literally all he knows. That doesn't excuse what he did. No, it doesn't. But it explains it." She stirred her coffee. "The saddest part is, he probably thought he was protecting you. In his mind, pushing you toward marriage and away from career was him being a good father. saving you from the struggle he went through. I sat with that for a while. It didn't make me less angry, but it helped me understand that my father's failure wasn't personal. He was just wrong. Catastrophically, painfully wrong. And some people never learn to be anything else. The lesson I want to leave you with is this: you cannot heal wounds you refuse to acknowledge exist. Whether it's a parent who dismissed you, a sibling who competed with you, or a system that underestimated you, the path forward starts with honesty. Be honest about what happened, be honest about how it affected you, and be honest about what you're willing to accept going forward. That's the story. Thank you for staying with me through all of it. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment. Tell me your story. I'd love to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, check the description for recommendations. Take care of yourselves. You're worth it.